Hello, welcome to Ditch the Dry month at ProDog Raw. If you're a dog owner who'd like to feel equipped to make the best nutritional choices for your dog, then you're in exactly the right place. My name's Anna, this is Alison, and we're part of the ProDog team. We have another great guest joining us in just a few minutes. Whilst we wait for people to join live, big welcome to those of you who are watching this back. We love to see you get involved in the conversation in the comments, regardless when you are watching this back. So let us know what resonates for you, what's helpful, share your experiences. Our page is always monitored. So if you do ask any questions, one of the ProDog team will get back to you. And I can see a few people are now joining us live. So big welcome to you. Welcome to Ditch the Dry month here at ProDog Raw. All month we are discussing the immense benefits of switching your dog from a dry processed diet to a fresh whole food raw diet. My name's Anna, this is Alison, we are part of the ProDog team, and we have another great guest lined up for you in just a moment. We shall introduce her, and we'll be chatting about the impact nutrition has on our dog's health, sharing some tips. We'll be busting some more myths. And so whether you've already ditched the dry or you're yet to make the switch, I've no doubt that what we'll be chatting about today will be super helpful and possibly even eye-opening for some of you. Ditch the Dry is now in its third year, and we set up the campaign because we just recognise that there's so many dogs out there who are just not yet experiencing the health benefits of a natural diet. And we knew that one of the main reasons for that is that raw feeding can sometimes just feel really complex to people. There's loads of myths, misinformation, opinions out there. So we do completely understand why it may seem baffling. So all month, we've been sharing the facts about canine nutrition, tips on how to make a successful switch, and tackling some of those myths as well. So if you stick around to the end today, we've got some really great resources to help get you started if you decide that now is the time to ditch the dry. So if you've got friends, family, neighbours who are also dog owners and you think that they would be open to this conversation, then please share our page with them, share the live with them. And I really encourage you to get involved in the conversation too. If you've got specific questions, drop them in. We've got some of the ProDog team in the comments, and they will get back to you during the live, or myself and Alison will get back to you after the live as well. So hit the like button, let us know that you are with us. And I didn't want to forget today, but last week, Alison, we realised that nobody could see our t-shirts. So I thought, let us show you it in full glory today. Let us hit the like button. Let us know if you like our t-shirts. Let us know where in the world you are watching from. If you're a raw feeder, drop in the comments how long you have been raw feeding for, as well as anything that you just wish you'd been told when you first made that switch from processed dog food to a natural diet. So anything that would have been really helpful for you to know in those early days, because your experience could really help somebody else as well. And so with all of that said, I think I've covered everything. Let's get our guests on, Alison.
Okay. Well, our next passionate Ditch the Dry guest is no stranger to detrimental health effects of processed food on both pets and humans. She graduated from vet school in New Zealand and practiced conventional veterinary medicine over there for a few years before she moved back to her home state of Colorado. After she returned back to the States, a couple of serious health issues affected her own pets and family members, forcing her to think outside of her conventional training box. It was then that she began to look into a more holistic approach to treating her clients' pets with dietary changes and more natural treatments. She is now an integrated expert holistic veterinarian who uses nutrition, acupuncture, herbal medicine, and supplements, which she feels has changed her entire practice and treatment outcomes. She also feels that every animal can benefit by either achieving optimal health or at least not suffering, even when they have a chronic illness or a disease such as cancer. Our guest's main mission is helping pets live longer and healthier lives. She is the founder of The Natural Pet Doctor, offers lots of free, brilliant online content, which covers a huge range of topics to help empower us as pet parents. We are very excited to introduce the amazing Dr. Katie Woodley.
Thanks
Welcome.
so much for having me. So excited to be here. Thanks, Anna and Allison.
Thank you for joining us. We were saying just before we jumped on today that because we've both been watching your coffee talks on Instagram, and we both have really been enjoying the stuff that you share there. So anyone watching, check out Dr. Katie's coffee talks on Instagram. So her Instagram is The Natural Pet Doctor. That's right, isn't it?
Yep.
How often do you do your coffee talks?
Yeah, so usually they're every Friday morning. So they're 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So for everyone across the ditch, it's like about 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. So it'd be 3 hours earlier than the current time we're at. So every Friday, and we cover different pet health topics. We look at the integrative approach, and I follow along your comments and your questions, and sometimes we do Q&As too, where I take your questions and answer those too.
Yeah, they're really great. I've really enjoyed listening into those.
Yeah, they are.
And so for those of you who haven't heard you speak before, what is an integrative approach to health? For those people who don't know, for those people who don't know your story, why is holistic healthcare so important to you?
Yeah. And the thing is when you go to vet school, when you go to, medical school for the human side, we're typically taught the conventional or the Western approach to medicine. So we're taught, about symptoms and problems, and these drugs treat the symptom, but we're never really taught to dive deeper and actually figure out the root cause of why that symptom actually occurred. So essentially, we're kind of like the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, like treating pets, where we're waiting for them to break, and then we're trying to do things to keep them comfortable. And that approach doesn't work very well. But unfortunately, that's our medical system. So for me personally, when my husband developed an autoimmune disease, when we moved back to the States after vet school, and that was a game changer. We were told that here's these immunosuppressives. They work about 60% of the time. They have really bad side effects like death, but it only happens to, like 1 in 100,000 people. So you shouldn't have to worry. And I was like, wait a second, there's something wrong here. And so I started down this rabbit hole of looking for, okay, well, there's got to be a reason why this happened. There's got to be other remedies. And then we found this world of other people healing their autoimmune diseases. And here I am treating pets the same way that we felt in the doctor's office, right? Telling people like, there's nothing more you can do. This is the end of the road for cancer. Like, the allergy drugs aren't working. So I don't know what to do. And it was such a frustrating place to be in and to put people in that I realized that I could do better for my pet patients. So I became acupuncture certified, then Chinese herbal medicine certified, then food therapy certified. And it completely changed how I practiced and the results that we got. So what's nice about how I do things now is I have the conventional knowledge. I have the Western knowledge. And there's a time and a place when we need to use drugs or we need to use medicine, especially in those acute situations or emergencies. But now the way I look at that pet and the way that I look at the body itself is very different from what I was taught in vet school. So I look at the body as a whole and how everything is interconnected. So it's not just like diarrhea, we treat the diarrhea. This is a gut health issue, but it could be impacting the brain and it could be causing anxiety or making it hard to like train these dogs. And it could be coming down to the food that we're feeding. There could also be a connection to the skin and gut. So if the gut health is off, if we're not treating the gut and we're only treating the skin or the allergies or the ear infection, we completely missed why something's happening. And that's why so many pet parents are stuck on this like treadmill of going back and forth to the vet clinic, getting more drugs, worrying about the side effects, expensive vet bills, and it's not fixing the root issue. So that's like a holistic approach. It doesn't mean we don't believe in like science or the other side of medicine. It allows us to be able to look at your pet's body very differently. And when we ask different questions, we get very different answers, and we can figure out why things are happening and fix it for good.
Yeah. And it's that thing of realizing as well that the body is such an amazing system that when you give it half a chance, whether it be human or animal, when you give that body half a chance by getting the foundations right, the body can heal itself
Yes.
in what seems like miraculous ways.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, that's the thing. And I think too, like the food topic is so important, and it's such a controversial thing, which always blows my mind in the pet side. And we'll talk more about that obviously, but like we also forget like our own stress is impacting our dogs and it's impacting their gut health. And so for feeding these really optimized diets, but we're forgetting about the other parts that impact health, like the environment and the cleaning chemicals we were talking about, and our own stress. And if we live in this chaos, it's going to impair your pet's ability to digest and absorb those nutrients from this amazing raw food that you're feeding. So essentially, to summarize what I just said, is that we have to look at the other factors of health too, because we can feed beautiful, raw, balanced diets over the long term. But if we're missing the components of optimal health from like environment and stress, and we're not managing that for ourselves, it can impact how your dog is absorbing and breaking down those vitamins and minerals in the food. So keep in mind, everything is interconnected. That's very, very important, and it's commonly missed.
Yeah, perfect. So on the topic of nutrition, which is obviously what we're here for today, why should people consider ditching the dry processed food and move into a more natural whole food raw diet?
Yeah. So I want to start that with an analogy. So I always say, okay, I want you to imagine, and I know there's probably a lot of people here that their pets are their fur babies, but think about if you had a newborn baby and you're walking into the pediatrician's office and you sit down, and you're like, Doc, what should I feed this baby to make sure I'm giving it all the nutrients that it needs to be healthy for the rest of its life? The doc goes, I've got the thing. And they put down a box of cereal like Cheerios that's fortified with vitamins and minerals and go, this is all you need for every single meal for the rest of your kid's life. What would you do? You'd be like, oh my God, who is this doctor? Like,
Yeah,
right? That would be our normal response. However, ironically, when we look at what we've been like trained to do as a veterinarian, this is what I was trained to do. And also what we've been told all along, what's best for our dogs is a processed food diet. So it's similar. It's like exactly like feeding these cereals that are fortified with synthetic vitamins and minerals and giving that for every single meal for the rest of your dog's life. Don't add human food. It's bad for them, right? I get pet parents all the time that are like, don't worry, I'm not adding human food. And I was like, no, I want you to add human food toppers. Like, those are good. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, let's just get rid of this. But, the thing is that that's exactly what we're doing. And unfortunately, it's essentially like we've all been brainwashed to think that if we step outside of this, we're going to create a lot of harm for our pets. But this is a processed food. We're not supposed to eat processed foods for our entire lives. We know that synthetic vitamins and minerals are not absorbed as well. And the way kibble's processed at high heat temperatures, it's producing inflammatory ingredients and chemicals that we can't measure necessarily in our pets' bodies. And the downside with this too is that it takes a while usually, unless there's something like a really, vitamin D toxicosis issue, but it takes a long time for these nutrient deficiencies to show up. And a lot of times they show up as skin disease. So they're mistaken for allergies or chronic GI issues. And now your pet's being diagnosed, maybe it's IBD. But in reality, it came down to this food that isn't better or important for us to kind of think about like how we feed ourselves and what's most important for us to get the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. And it comes from fresh food diets.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of fear around that because it's become part of like the veterinary culture to feed these processed foods for every single meal.
Yeah, it's become the norm, hasn't it? And
Yeah.
we actually spoke about this last week with Dr. Judy Morgan about the language that's used around pet food and referring to highly processed food as traditional and fresh whole food as non-traditional.
It's crazy, right?
Amusing because, well, it's really serious actually. It's not really amusing. But things have become twisted, haven't they?
Yeah, and I mean the biggest thing too is, I didn't know the story of how kibble got started and how pet food came like to be. And when you actually look at the history of how pet food was developed, it wasn't developed by like doctors and nutritionists that were like, we've got to make sure that these pets are doing well. It was developed by an electrician watching sailors feed stale biscuits to the dogs and go, huh, I can make a lot of money from this. And they did. And then it became, when you start looking at, well, who are the makers of these pet food company, like these pet food companies? Like we've got big brands, we've got things like Mars and Colgate. What do they make? They make candy, they make processed foods. They actually don't give one or two licks about like whether or not your pet is healthy. They want to make sure that you are going through those dog food like those kibble diets and that you're feeding them and that you make sure that if you don't feed it, that we're going to tell you that it's going to create harm. And so, there's a lot of like slogans that have developed and a lot of fear that's been, allowed to evolve into the vet community because I have colleagues that, they're like, oh my gosh, how dare you put these clients onto a fresh food diet? They need to be on a prescription diet, which, comes with its own connotations, but we have to look at how it started and the reasons why, and it doesn't come down to optimal health. And I think that right there is a huge awakening for a lot of pet parents once they realize that's how pet food actually started.
It's like when I grew up with dogs, like we all did, and when I was really young, they were all fed sort of tin meat and scraps. So they got all the scraps, the left veggies, leftover meat, bone, and they were always pretty healthy.
Yep.
We didn't chemically flea them every 2-3 months either. It was just if they got fleas occasionally, maybe we'd do something then. But I never forget, I was about 8 or 9, I think, and my dad came back from the vet. We had 2 black labs at the time with this great big sack of, well, just, I don't know what it was. It was this great big sack of
Corn.
and he said, with this big grin on his face, my vet has said, this is the best thing ever now to start feeding our dogs. And he's like, they were labs, they loved the food. And I remember the first night putting these brown, dry, horrible looking biscuits in these 2 bowls. And the dogs sort of looked at each other and gone, seriously?
Yeah.
And it was like that. I always remember it because it was the first time it really turned up the nose at food. And it was like, no, they'll eat it, it's the best thing. And then, they sort of passed away quite early in life compared to the other ones that were, always fed the scraps and the meat and the stuff like that. So
Yeah. And that's a good point because, one of the common myths that's out there is like, well, my dog is picky. Why would they eat raw food? Right. And I always tell people whenever we're switching from kibble to a fresh food diet, whether it's a lightly cooked or a raw, depending on what we're doing, I say most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, your dog's going to go, oh my gosh, what is this? And I actually went through that with our Finn, our German Shepherd, where it was probably, I don't know, six years ago where we transitioned him to a fresh food diet. And he literally, I was feeding him kibble. So I've been there with like pet parents, like, I was brainwashed and I was like, oh my gosh, should I step away from this? I don't know if I'm going to harm him. But I got to a place where we would put down that dry food. He would literally pick it up like piece by piece and look at you, and it's like falling out of his mouth like, Mom, why are you feeding this to me? And I was like, this isn't good. Why? The dog, like, he needs to eat to live. And the fact that he's going to refuse his food and he is willing to die because this food doesn't taste good. So we started creating his diets for him. He literally started dancing. He would spin and bark, and like he just loved it so much. And it was a huge awakening for me. And I think a lot of pet parents get fearful once again, But your picky pets are picky because that food tastes like cardboard, for one, and
Yeah.
the palatants that are sprayed on top of it. That's why, I mean, these rancid fats, they have to spray it on there because the dog wouldn't eat it off of the assembly line. Like when it
Yeah.
comes out of the big oven and it's extruded, they won't touch it because it doesn't taste good. So they have to actually add pro-inflammatory chemicals onto it to make it taste so that they actually eat it.
Yeah.
Now, and so I think for your pets that are picky, like start adding in, if you're worried about switching to a raw food diet and you're not sure yet, all you have to do is start adding some like fresh food toppers and see what your pet chooses. That's a good experiment to do. Does your pet choose the fresh food? Do they choose some of the fresh meat? Do they eat that first, or do they go to the kibble first? And that can be a great experiment for people that are a little bit worried about transitioning right away.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
that's really helpful. Would you talk a little bit about the gut and how important the gut is to overall health, and then also how important that fresh food diet is to a healthy gut, maintaining
Yeah.
a healthy gut?
Yeah. So the microbiome is an emerging area of research within the past 15 years. And there's a lot more studies coming out with dogs and cats too, which is really helpful. But the thing that a lot of people don't realize, we think about like the gut as a place to like digest food and that's it. And then you poop it out, right? You poop out what you don't absorb. But there's a lot more going on in there. And there's this entire ecosystem called the microbiome, where there's trillions of different types of bacteria, protozoa, fungi that in a healthy state, they should all be functioning and working well together. And what they're doing is they're actually digesting the food. They're breaking down specifically like the fiber. So a lot of the carbs, your soluble and insoluble fibers, they're digesting that, turning it into vitamins and minerals. They're actually producing different neurotransmitters. So 90% of serotonin is actually made in the gut. They're producing hormones like vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually a hormone in the body that's important for immune health and like bone regulation and growth and all those things. And so what happens is if all of a sudden this microbiome, this ecosystem becomes unbalanced, we can create a lot of health issues because we have a direct connection to the brain from the gut through the vagus nerve. So we have a sympathetic nervous system, a parasympathetic, we have these direct connections, we have immune cells that are being produced that are interacting with the immune system of your pets, that are directly connecting to the hormonal system. And so if we start getting a lot of disrupted bacteria and they start producing inflammatory chemicals, what that's going to do is it's going to increase the levels of what we call oxidative stress, which is equal to like inflammation in the body. And what happens then is now we start getting inflammation going to the brain. We can get inflammation because there's a direct connection from the gut to the skin. So, what does that show up for in pets and dogs specifically? Where we see anxious or reactive dogs, that can be a direct connection. Anytime I see that, I'm like, there's something going on in the gut. For skin allergies, ear infections, anal gland problems, chewing at the feet, there's something going on in the gut. And with nutrition, if we're feeding a processed food diet, so a diet high in carbohydrates that are processed, that diet is already pro-inflammatory. It typically has higher omega-6s. There's those other chemicals that are being produced. The other thing too is a lot of these diets are really high in glyphosate or Roundup, which is a herbicide.
Yeah.
That herbicide directly kills the bacteria in the gut. So it's contributing to this dysbiosis and this imbalance. However, when we feed fresh food diets, now what we're doing is we are providing the right types of protein, the right types of fats, the right types of carbohydrates in the natural form. So the difference between like a synthetic vitamin and mineral is that we've extracted, say, like vitamin C from the whole food component, or we've extracted zinc, or we're taking manganese and using that synthetic form. So we've removed it from like the synergistic components that allow it to do what it's supposed to do in the body. With fresh food, now what we're doing is we're using organ meats, liver, spleen. Those are great natural sources of iron and copper and B vitamins. So we're we're using food as medicine and food as the vitamins and minerals, and the body recognizes those. It keeps that microbiome happy and healthy so that it doesn't produce all this inflammation and aggravate the rest of the body. So that's key. And also, too, the other thing with fresh food diets, especially a raw food, is we're providing the gut with a natural source of enzymes.
Yeah.
So your processed food is dead food. There is nothing alive in that. I don't care if it says it has probiotics added. Those are long dead. They were like burned out at the very beginning. They're not there.
That's a new buzzword now. Probiotics added to kibble. I've seen that.
I'm like,
Wow,
like
how
the
does that
raw
work?
coated kibble. I'm like, this is not raw. Like, how is this raw? This is the stupidest thing, like marketing, right? And so, when we feed these fresh foods, we're getting the natural enzymes in so many dogs. And as they age, they lose those digestive powers. Their digestive enzymes decrease. It makes them harder to break down the food so that we don't get the vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And I see those every single day with the hair tissue tests that we do. Calcium, magnesium is low. Those are directly connected to over 3,900 enzymatic reactions occurring in the body. They're tranquilizing minerals. Magnesium, like your doctor should be telling you, if you're stressed, you need more magnesium. And it's the same for our pets. And so if we're feeding these processed food diets, they're becoming nutrition deficient. Over time, we're affecting the pH of the stomach, which is then going to also affect the digestive enzymes. Your pet's not going to break down the food. They're going to poop out massive amounts of stool, probably all the supplements that you're trying to like balance out this poor quality diet with. And it just becomes an expensive adventure, right? That's not fun, and usually leads to more and more vet visits. Your pets get sicker. They have shortened lifespans. And this is where fresh food, raw food diets are so important, and starting them from the very beginning, if you can, day one, getting your pets onto these fresh food diets rather than introducing a kibble and, we can talk about some of the transition, but it's so important because you don't want them to like get used to a kibble diet and forget what real food is, forget how to chew on a bone or to eat those raw meaty bones, because that can happen too and make it harder to transition your dogs over to a fresh food diet.
Yeah, and I think when you're looking at a large pet store and you can take 10 bags of similar ingredient type processed kibble, and the amount of vitamin and minerals that add in are all completely different and all completely synthetic, then it's like it doesn't take much to understand that, there is no perfect diet in a synthetic world. There can't be, because everyone would use the same amount of synthetic vitamins and minerals, and they're just all over the place.
Yeah, well, and also too, like when you're cooking it at such high heat temperatures, you're going to alter the bioavailability. So how digestible is this food? It's not. And, we know that a lot of vitamins and so your vitamins and minerals are heat sensitive. And so if you're testing the food beforehand, before you send it into this high heat cooker, right, the oven that's going to blast it, and it looks like it's balanced, right? I mean, there's concerns with that too. We don't really know what exactly is a balanced diet. We have these minimum recommendations, but it's not going to be the same coming back out, right? And so this is where, when you have a fresh food diet, for one, you take back control of the ingredients you're using. Two, you can add variety with different foods. And this is where you can add in different organs, and they're going to have different types of vitamins and minerals, different proteins. Those are going to have different nutritional status. You have control over that versus relying on and trusting companies that are sourcing, dead, diseased, dying animals, roadkill. You don't know what's going into these feedlot animals, the stress that they had. They were grain fed, they were antibiotics, growth hormones. So you actually become more empowered once you start learning how to do that and take back the control of what you can actually give to your pets.
Yeah, there's so much in that you've just spoken about, Dr. Katie. There's, I think the thing that really stuck out for me though, and is perhaps important for people listening in, is just this understanding that, because quite often when you talk about poor gut health, people generally associate that with digestive issues, and and where you said that actually the state of the dog's gut can actually manifest in terms of behavioural issues, and it can impact mood, and it can come out as skin conditions and ear issues. I think that's a really important thing to emphasise.
Yeah, because I think, if you know yourself, if you've got bad stomach ache, it makes you,
good.
it makes you irritable. It makes you,
Yeah. It's like
so
IBS, right? I mean, it's a functional disorder. If you don't see inflammation in the gut lining, and it's because of that direct connection to the brain. And a lot of it comes down to vitamins and minerals. And if these bacteria aren't getting the things that they need, we're going to get, potentially high E. coli. It may not show up as loose stool. And the other interesting thing too, there's a lot of research that shows that certain types of bacteria in the gut will actually create insulin resistance. So if you think about, if we're feeding kibble, which is a really high carbohydrate food, high starch, is going to be putting a lot of strain on the pancreas and creating insulin resistance, right? Um, if we have a bad microbiome, that can actually create insulin resistance too. So what do you see? You see a pet that's really hard to lose weight. They're obese. You tried all the prescription diets. You tried, putting them on a weight loss plan. And a lot of times those weight loss plans are not effective because, for one, it's not a species appropriate diet. And two, what we just did, we already probably have a nutritional vitamin mineral deficiency. And now we've reduced the food even further. So we probably actually cut out even more of the vitamins and minerals that were in there. So we're actually worsening the problem. When in reality, if we have a pet that, we've ruled out thyroid issues, and we start looking and they're having trouble losing weight, we need to look at these fresh food diets that are going to help the body work better, that are going to reduce inflammation, and that are going to provide a good food source in prebiotics. So your different vegetables, your leafy greens, your Brussels sprouts, your, blueberries. These are all great natural prebiotics that feed the bacteria, and you're going to rebalance that microbiome, and it's going to help your pet lose weight. Like, look at people, for example, right? If you eat donuts all day and cheeseburgers, like, you're going to be insulin resistant, you're going to gain weight. It's going to be really hard to lose weight. You can run marathons every day. It's not going to work. But as soon as you clean up your diet and you get off of the processed food, you are healing your microbiome and your gut health, which is also going to help the insulin resistance issue. And you're going to absorb more vitamins and minerals, and you're going to be in better health. The same thing happens with our dogs and our cats too.
And they're more satiated, aren't they? Because, you're not feeding all these starches, sugars and carbs, and then you get your sugar crash an hour later and slump and lethargic, and then you want more food again. And it's just that circle.
Well, that's the crazy thing. Yeah, your gut bacteria tell you. They're like, nope, we need more of that. Because now what you've done is that with these high starchy diets, these processed foods, so kibble, they can actually look at the microbiome. So you send a stool sample in, the lab looks at it. They know exactly, without you telling them, what type of food you feed. So if you're feeding high carbohydrate food, you're going to feed a certain subset of bacteria in the microbiome. So if you're all of a sudden, like, you're not feeding those high carbs anymore, the microbiome can balance out and change pretty quickly, which is really nice to know. But you're going to get cravings, right? That bacteria is like, oh my gosh, I need my food, please, please, right? Like chocolate and all those other cravings. And that's why you find, like, sometimes these dogs do get like kibble addicted, where they just want these carbs and they prefer the carbs over fresh food. That can happen. And that would be an indicator that we have a gut health issue. And this is even more important now that we get these dogs onto a fresh food diet, because if we ignore that sign, that symptom, then that's where things can progress to autoimmune disease, cancer, chronic allergies, these chronic behavior issues. And then if you go to a traditional vet, they put your pet on an antidepressant. They put them, they give them metronidazole or Flagyl for the diarrhea that occurs. And then it just wipes out the microbiome even more. And all we had to do was use more fresh food.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? Let's talk about, so now we're talking about the topic of fresh food. So we've explained to people some really great reasons why they should consider ditching the dry. What would be your top tips for people to make that switch successfully? Obviously, you spoke a little bit ago about just introducing little bits of fresh food slowly. What other tips have you got for people?
Yeah. So, I always, whenever I'm working with a client, I always ask, what's the comfort level, right? Because, if there is a lot of fear there or hesitation, if I'm like, just throw away the bag and start a raw, like they may not do it, or there's going to be fear, that stress. Remember, your emotions affect your dog's digestion. And so this is important to look at, okay, what do I feel comfortable with? And there's a lot of people that are okay with 100% switch. So I always start there. What are you comfortable doing? If you feel more comfortable adding in fresh foods, so this is your superfoods that you can top the kibble with, and start there. And then over time, you can slowly transition. So this is like a 2-week transition period. If you're worried they're super sensitive, they're prone to GI upset, you don't want to go to the vet clinic or go to the ER, do your 2-week transition. So you're removing 25% of kibble processed food. You're adding in, but it's a pre-made, raw or lightly cooked food diet to replace that. You do that for 3 to 5 days, and then you do half and half, 3 to 5 days. Then you're 75% new diet, so less processed, fresh foods, and 25% olds, 3 to 5 days. Typically around the 2-week time period is when you'll be on to 100% new food diet. So that's an easy way to do it. And it's, I think people feel really comfortable doing that. Now, if you're like, I'm really worried about this food, hearing about how bad processed food is, I need to get off of this. Then what I would do is you can't do a 100% transition. So this is where I recommend fasting your dog. Can you hear me okay still?
You did cut out then for a moment, but I just want to let people know that we will be sharing lots of resources at the end. So if you did miss any of that, we've got some of our own resources, but we've also got some resources from Dr. Katie as well. We will share all the links to that at the end. So if you did miss out on any of that,
perfect. Yeah. And there's like transition things in the guide too. So you can, if you're the type of person that wants to get rid of this processed food because you've learned all the things that we're talking about and you're like, I don't want to risk it. I don't want another day of this junk going into my dog's body. And so this is where I recommend for your dog doing a 24-hour fast with bone broth, which is a great natural, like lots of collagen and glycine. It's supporting the gut health. And if you're worried, like, how do I get through that day, right? Because your dog's probably used to eating certain meal times and, they're very persistent little things, or they can be. And so this is where I recommend like freezing some bone broth, and you can give that as like treats throughout the day. So they feel like they're getting stuff. And I promise you, they're not going to suffer or die or pass away from a fast. Obviously, if your pet has sugar issues, diabetic, talk to your veterinarian. But for your otherwise healthy pet, 24-hour fast, bone broth, and then you put them onto a raw food diet or the new diet that you've chosen. And a lot of dogs will do fine with that because what we did is we allowed the gut to rest. And what happens is when we do, you'll see like intermittent fasting in people, right? And all the research that's coming out, there's contractile periods that occur when we fast. This is why it's important to not snack throughout the day or feed our dogs treats throughout the day, because we want them to have this period of rest where it's actually contracting and cleansing out the gut health. The gut is, this is its natural cleansing. So that's what that 24-hour fast does. It's priming your dog to be ready for a new diet. And then when you introduce it, you're less likely to have GI upset or concerns there. And most pets do really well. Now, if you start a new diet and you're seeing GI upset, you're seeing gassiness, there's a little bit of loose stool, what I highly recommend is having slippery elm on hand. And that way you can give them a little bit of slippery elm with some bone broth. And that's very soothing. It's a mucilage herb, and it's going to help reduce inflammation. It can help with, it's firming up the stool. You can also add in a little bit of psyllium husk, which is a great fiber to help bulk up the stool. The other thing too that I tend to use with these pets when we're changing over is using some like probiotics and a digestive enzyme. So a lot of these dogs coming from dry food processed diets, they don't have the digestive enzymes. Their stomach pH isn't low enough to activate the pancreas to release the digestive enzymes to break down these high protein foods. So you can always use a little bit of, an enzyme supplement that has lipase and your proteases. So don't be afraid to do that too. And you can always start them on something before you do the transition also.
Yeah, we've got a supplement called Digestive, which covers a lot of those ingredients. So that's always good to just add in at the start of the mix, definitely.
Perfect. Yeah. So doing that. And, I think the biggest thing is that if you see GI upset, as long as your pet's doing okay, your dog's doing fine, you don't have to rush to the vet. There's so many natural resources to be able to help them. And, don't keep feeding them, like think about yourself. If I have diarrhea, that's the last thing I want to do, right? I'm not going to keep feeding. I'm resting my gut. I'm taking things like slippery elm. You can use things like fennel and chamomile teas to add in to help reduce the gas and provide soothing properties too. So you can use these natural remedies to help the gut calm down, rebalance, get used to things, and then, start with small amounts of food to make sure your dog's tolerating it.
Yeah. So we say sort of small amount of food often for the first few days, and if everything's fine, then you can just gradually, increase the amount and drop down the amount you're feeding. But most dogs do pretty well straight away, we find.
Yeah. I mean, I find the thing where things can go wrong is a lot of really sick animals.
Yeah.
And this is where like inflammatory bowel disease or protein losing enteropathy, pancreatitis patients. I mean, the thing is though, is that, that's another myth in itself where, the processed foods are rancid fats and, they're cooked fats, and that's creating inflammation and overworking the pancreas. So a lot of times these fresh food diets are better. But two, keep in mind the amount of oils or fats that are being added to, because if your pet's not ready for it, digestion wise, that can sometimes aggravate them too.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. So the key really is don't panic.
Yep.
So if you are making that switch, if there are changes to your dog's digestion, to their toilet habits, then don't panic.
Yep. Take a deep breath and have slippery elm on hand prior. Yes. Is what I recommend. So
perfect. Thank you so much. We've got a couple of minutes left. Have you got any particular myths that come to you quite often that you always hear people talk about that you'd just like to kind of put straight today?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones is the behavior changes, right? People think that if you start feeding them these raw food diets, they're going to get aggressive. Why wouldn't they come after me? I'm worried they're going to go after the cat in the house, right? They're like, this is tasty all of a sudden. And, the thing is that it's 100% a myth. And a lot of times for all the reasons we discussed today about like the gut health being more balanced and your pet's absorbing more vitamins and minerals and the nutrients in like a fresh food diet, they actually feel better. They're less likely to have those behavior changes. I mean, if you're seeing a change in behavior, I'd be 100% going to the gut and the food that we're feeding first before, assuming. I've never seen a dog turn aggressive. The only thing I would say is like if you're adding in raw meaty bones and you have other animals in the house, like sometimes they can get like a bit defensive over it because they're like, whoa, this is really awesome. Like this is so
high
good.
value.
It's high value. So, that's a situation that can happen, but it's not raw food making them aggressive. That's a training thing that you need to work with. But other than that, your fresh food diets are so key, so important to start adding in, even if it's a little bit, or if it's a complete transition to a new diet, because I see it every day. I saw it with my own pets, like with Finn. I mean, he ended up getting brain cancer. We have a lot of spraying that's done in our town that we live in. And so I believe that played a part for his brain tumor. But seeing him go from like spitting kibble out to dancing and spinning and barking and getting so excited for his food every single meal literally like lit up my heart. And also too, we were told there was nothing we could do for his brain tumor because of where it was. and we were able to gain another year of good quality life. We were at a point where he needed to be put down, like seizures. He wasn't responding to the conventional seizure medication. And the neurologist said, this is it. Take him home, love on him, and bring him back. And I said, no, I know more. I can do better. And so that's why it's so important. And we continued to feed him, a raw food diet. There's a lot of things I know now years later that I would change, but that's part of the journey.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important for all the pet parents here listening and learning. And remember, like, if this is your starting place, welcome, congratulations. This is like day one of like the best journey ever. It's not always easy, but we're all in this together. And that's what I love about things like this and learning more. And we can, what's a little tip that we can do to, change today, or maybe work on, adding in fresh food for myself. And I'm going to give the dog some leftover fresh food because I'm improving my own health too. So, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Little things do add up. One change can make a huge difference for your dog.
And I don't think age matters either. I think that's one of the questions we get asked a lot is, my dog's 14 now, it's too late to change. It's never too late.
Oh my gosh, they can get a new lease on life.
I know.
It's amazing watching, for all the reasons we discussed, right? And it's so neat to see them like light up, and like cognitive decline improves because we're feeding these real foods that have all these vitamins and minerals that support optimal aging and joint health. And it's don't be afraid to try it. That's the thing that breaks my heart the most, is like just not even trying something different. So just try just a little thing, like even if it's giving like a raw meaty like bone, like a chicken neck or a turkey neck, or as a treat to start with too, and see what your animal does. And you'll probably find that your dog just absolutely loves it and does really well with it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Katie. We're going to let you jump off now because we know you've got a full day of consultations today. So Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We are going to, people who are watching, just stick with us because we have got another few bits to talk through. And we've got, like I said, we've got lots of resources to share with you. But thank you, Dr. Katie.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
So if you enjoyed this live, then I am pretty certain you'll also enjoy the other lives that we've done this month with Dr. Judy Morgan, which was last week, and then the week before was Dr. Nick Thompson. So go check those out if you haven't already. Please, like I said before, like the page, share the lives with friends and family. And like Dr. Katie was saying then, if you do feel inspired by what we've spoken about today to make some changes to your dog's diet, then we've got lots of help on hand for you. The team are in the comments at the moment. They're going to share all the links to all of this. So we've got, obviously, Dr. Katie's coffee talks, which you'll find on her Instagram page,
And
Facebook, which is the Natural Pet Doctor.
We'll put all the links below anyway for you, so you've got them all.
Yeah, so just check out in the links below because the team are going to be adding those in as I talk through them. Also, Dr. Katie's got a free healthy pet food guide, which is a free downloadable resource. So check that out as well. And also, if anybody is interested in the hair mineral tests that Dr. Katie was talking about, she did mention it really briefly, but Alison, do you want to just give people an idea of how?
I mean, basically, a hair mineral test is available to anybody in the world because it doesn't sort of change anything from sending to England over to the States. And basically, they test all for imbalances and minerals and anything that's sort of out of sync. And then obviously, Dr. Katie, as a veterinarian, will sort of, give back all the feedback of what is in imbalance and what you can change to sort of improve that from food wise.
So that is
a really, really useful tool, especially those those dogs that have been struggling for years and you've tried everything and nothing seems to be working, or there's something still not quite there that you're not happy with. So these are like really, really, really good tests to do.
And it's really about getting to that root cause of what's going on, what's missing from your dog's diet. So there's a 10% discount on that until August the 23rd if you use the Healthy Pet code at checkout. So like I said, the team will be sharing the links to all of this in the comments below. Also, we've got our ProDog Facebook group, which is the ProDog Rebellion. So we're in there every day. Well, I say we. Alison is in there every day, helping to guide people, answering questions, just helping people to navigate the world of raw feeding. So it's a really great community. If you're not a member already, hop over there, join into that group. If you've got specific questions, use the search mechanism in the group, because chances are somebody else has already asked your question and there's probably already a lot of answers in there. But if not, just feel free to get in there, post your questions. That's what the group's all about, to help you on your raw feeding journey.
And also, just to say, it doesn't matter if you're not feeding ProDog. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It's just, just there anyway.
Yeah, and we also run a monthly Facebook Live in that group as well, which is on all different topics around holistic healthcare for dogs. So hop over there if you're not a member already. And also, please don't forget, the ProDog team are available to answer your questions directly. Alison, that's part of what Alison does in her role. So if you've got specific questions around raw feeding, around getting started on a fresh natural diet, then you can message us either via Messenger through Facebook, or email our customer services at customer-services at ProDogRaw.com, and Alison will be eagerly awaiting your questions, helping you to get started. And finally, we've got our Ditch the Dry webpage on our website as well. There's loads of useful resources, links on there as well as information about our Ditch the Dry competition. And also, if you are a ProDog customer already, during August, if you refer a new customer to us, then you get £35 to spend on ProDog products.
Yes, it gets credited into your account. Yeah,
and you will have a referral link. You'll have your own personal referral link, which you'll find in your...
Is that Rudy?
That's my Rudy chirping in. He's saying, I'm ready for my dinner now. You'll have your own personal referral link on your dashboard. And if you share that with whoever you are recommending, as long as they purchase their order through that link, then you will get £35 credited to your account to spend on ProDog products. So, but email our customer services if you get stuck with any of that, and we can help guide you on that. So, like Dr. Katie said, if anything that we've talked about has resonated for you, and you wanna take the next step, regardless how big or small that action is, just taking that next step. So whether it be to share this live with another dog owner, get hold of Dr. Katie's free guide, take a look at our Ditch the Dry website, join the ProDog Rebellion group. We would love to see you in there. Whatever action it is that you take, it will help move another dog one step closer to living their best life, which is why we are all here today. So thank you everyone for listening in. Thank you to Alison